Hello, I'm Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate how to make this adorable pumpkin block. So let's take a look at it, okay? My favorite part of this pumpkin block is this little funky stem right here. So I've used green fabrics for the stem, a variety of prints in orange. Now you can make this all one color of orange or dig through your scraps and look for all these little different pieces of orange fabrics that you might have laying around. So basically this whole block for the most part is stitching a bunch of 2.5-inch squares together. Now in the previous video I showed how to make this little acorn block, and the video before that I showed how to make the maple leaf block. Now this is part of a series of 3 blocks that is going to be used to make this fun little table runner. Okay, so now let me show you how to cut all of your fabrics. Okay, so here we go. You have 3 different fabrics. For your background, select a light color so that the pumpkin will really stand out. You're going to need 4 1.5-inch squares, 24 2.5-inch squares, and out of the green you're going to need 4 1.5-inch squares, 1 3.5-inch square, and from the orange you're going to need 12 2.5-inch squares. Now if you're not sure how to cut quilt fabric, watch my video called Tips for Cutting Quilt Fabric, and I go into great detail on how to cut it out efficiently so you're not wasting your time cutting out one little square at a time. This is the block layout. I know it looks a little complicated, but it's really not. The letters in each block represents the fabric. So here's your A, which is the background fabric. In here is where the green goes, that's B. And then C is the body of the pumpkin. Okay, let's go over how to make the pumpkin stem. So here, take all 4 of your green 1.5-inch squares, and you're going to draw a line down from one corner to the other. So place your ruler there, and with a pencil or fabric marker, draw a line. Do that on all 4 of your squares. Okay, so now take 2 of your orange 2.5-inch squares, and in the corner of each one of those orange squares, put 1 green square down in the corner like that. Now you're going to stitch from corner to corner, but do not stitch on the pencil line. Go in just a little bit and stitch right next to it along that corner, that line. Okay? Remember, you're doing 2 of these. Then you're going to trim this off. So place your ruler along there. Place your 1/4-inch line on your stitch line and trim the corner off. So you're making 2 of these. All right, so now you're going to take 2 more orange squares, and on the background fabric there's 4 1.5-inch squares that you'll need. You're going to draw a line from corner to corner on that one, just like you did on this one. Same thing, except you're using background fabric. Remember, you're making 4. All right, so then once you've got those 4 made, or excuse me, now you have 6 made. Remember, you've already trimmed off your corner. Now fold it over, press on the back side of the seam first, then fold this over and press, and you're pushing the seam towards the dark green. Okay, and on this one you're pressing the seam towards the background fabric. So you have 4 of these and 2 of these. Okay, so now you've got 2 little green squares left over. So now we're going to work on the rest of the stem. So take one of the squares and place it in a corner. Again, you're going to stitch not on the pencil line, but right next to it. Then you're going to place your 1/4-inch line on the stitch line and trim that corner off. Then press with your iron, don't finger press, press with your iron. Fold this over and press, and you want to push the seam towards the dark side. Okay, so now you've got one on already. Take the other green square and put it up in this corner and do the same thing. Don't stitch on the pencil line, stitch right next to it along there. Then trim this corner off just like you did before. Trim it off, then press on this side with your iron, fold this over and press. Okay, so now you've got the stem almost done. One more little piece to make for the stem. So here's a 2.5 inch square of background fabric. So from this edge over is 1¼ inches. So put a little dot there. Then up here, 1/4 inch in, put a little dot there. Now I'm going to turn this, it makes it easier for me. Place your ruler on those two little edges, okay? Once you got it lined up, whoops, my hand slipped, then you're going to trim it off. So it's now going to look like this, okay? Now take your 3.5 inch square of background fabric and you're going to place it up here like this. Okay, now you're going to stitch 1/4 inch along this edge, 1/4 inch in, which is roughly right there at that point, okay, and stitch along there. Then after you've stitched, have the dark side facing up and press on this side of the seam. Then unfold it and press again, pushing the seam towards the dark side. Now, I usually flip it over because it's easier for me to square it up, something this awkward. You're going to place your 2.5 inch line on your ruler here and here. So you're going to line it up. And once you have it lined up, you're going to trim just two sides. So you're going to trim here and here. And it's going to look like that. Now, you want to still turn the block. You've just cut this edge and this edge. So turn it. Line up your 2.5 inch line again on the two previously cut edges. And if there's any fabric sticking out here or there, there may not be anything, go ahead and trim it off if there's anything there, okay? So when you're done, it's going to look like this. Now let's go over here and we're going to lay out all of the squares. So you should always do that. Lay out all your pieces so you know where you're going when you're putting this together. So now you're going to start stitching all the squares together in each row. So make sure you've got everything laid out in the direction that you want. For instance, this is how the stem is laid out, okay? And then here are the half square triangles, not half square triangles, but the corners are cut off on here. Make sure you've got them lined up in the correct direction, and down here too, and over here. The entire block is surrounded by background fabric. So, okay, so now take one row at a time. What I usually do is I stack up all the squares in order in that row, take them to my sewing machine. Then I take the first two squares, bring right sides together, line it up, stitch 1/4 inch seam, and just keep attaching them together. Taking the next one, pin and stitch 1/4 inch. Stitch that row together and then just lay the row out. Then go to the next row. Collect all those pieces in order. Okay? Take it to your sewing machine and begin stitching them together. Go all the way down. All right, so now let's come back over here. Now you're going to have your rows looking like this. Now, don't press anything just yet. After you've got them all stitched, lay out your rows in the order they're going to be stitched together in. Okay, so now you need to press. Never skip the pressing process. It will make quilting so much easier for you if you press as you go along. So I'm going to turn some of these rows over, okay? And I want you to focus on the direction that I have the seams pressed in. The seams in this row are going that direction. The seams in this row are going in the opposite direction. Then this row goes back the other way, and it just keeps doing that all the way down the block. We do this so that when you go to line up everything, it all just falls into place so much easier. So one of the ways that I like to press when I'm at the ironing board, when I've got all these little squares stitched together, is I fold the first one under in like that and then press. And with one hand, I lift, press with the other hand. Lift, press, lift, press. Keep going on down, and it goes really fast when you do it that way. Then lift up the block to the front side as showing. Keep your block lifted a little bit, and with your iron, push against that seam, forcing the seam to go out. And go to the next one. Do the same thing. Keep it lifted and press, going all the way down that row. Okay, so and then take the next one and do the same thing. Okay, so now get this back going the right way. Now you're going to take each row and stitch them together. So take these, I'm going to show with these two rows. I'm going to lay them on top of each other. Now the seam on the bottom should be going in the opposite direction than the seam on top. And you want, the seams are not on top of each other, but next to each other. So get them in real close. It should feel fairly flat in there if you've got it in right. Then you want to place a pin to hold that seam in there. Then go to the next one, line it up, put a pin in it, and so forth, all the way down. Then from the raw edge in, stitch 1/4 inch all the way along there. Then unfold it and go to the next row. Bring it on top. Line up those seams. I can't stress how important it is. Get them in real close. Place pins in it at each seam, and then stitch 1/4 inch again. Continue on down till you get them all stitched together. Then it's going to look like this. Okay, now we're not quite done yet. We have a couple of more steps to do, but already it's looking good. Okay, so let me turn this over. Now, you need to press these seams on the rows that we just stitched together. So, fold this one under, and with your iron, press, and then lift, fold it back under again, and press. And then again, it's called production line pressing. It goes really fast that way. Then after you've got all the seams pressed on the back side, come to the front, keep the block lifted. Let me turn it around. Keep the block lifted, and now you're going to push with your iron against the seam, pushing them all in one direction. Then go to the next one, press it, always keeping one end of the block lifted a little bit, and keep pressing all along. So on the back, push these seams. See how they're all going in one direction. Okay, now one more step. Looking good right now. Okay, so take your 12.5 inch square ruler. I highly recommend one of these if you want your blocks to come out nice and even. Place your 12.5 inch ruler right in the center, lining it up. Now, not everybody's blocks come out perfect. Sometimes you have little pieces of fabric sticking out here and there. This is where you need to trim anything off that's sticking out. So once you've got it lined up, if there's anything sticking out, trim 2 sides first. Okay, then take the block, take this corner and turn it. Now here's my 2 previously cut sides. Take this edge of your ruler and this edge and place it on those 2 previously cut edges. Then check to see if anything is sticking out over here and there. If there is, take this moment to trim it off. And then you are done with this block. Isn't this pretty? I just love this block. I think a whole quilt would be fun, having these little orange pumpkins all over it. Now let's take one more look at the table runner. Okay, now remember, view all of the videos so that you can put these 3 blocks together, and then the next video I'll show you how to put this fun sashing and this little end on the table runner. It's an easy process. I'm going to show you some simple steps to make it easy for you. Okay, well, to keep informed on all my future videos, click on one of my subscribe buttons. There's one down there in the lower right hand corner. It's red, it says subscribe. It's there throughout the entire video. Then in the upper left hand corner is a little round picture of my face floating around. That's also a subscribe button, so you can click on that one also. When you do that, YouTube will prompt you for your email address. Enter that information, and the next time I have a new video, YouTube will send you a brief email with a big button in the center, and it takes you directly to my latest video. I'm Cheryl. I'm really glad you came to my sewing room, and I'll see you next time, and happy sewing.